Prosecutors in Los Angeles have released dramatic new evidence in the brutal murder of a Hollywood executive and his wife. As Ron Allen reports, it is only the latest in a case that has been the talk of the town.
The brutal murder case of Beverly Hills millionaire entertainment executive Jose Menendez and his wife Kitty was already filled with Hollywood intrigue. Their two sons awaiting trial, charged with killing their parents to collect a $14 million inheritance. Now the case has taken another dramatic turn, with the release of a tape recording made when the brothers phoned the police emergency line last August. Lyle, 22, says he and brother Eric, 19, have just found their parents' bodies in the family TV room.
What's the problem? Someone killed my parents. Pardon me?
The brothers have said they were at the movies when the shootings happened. At first, police thought it was a mafia hit over an entertainment deal gone sour. But then evidence, including a movie script about a kid who kills his rich parents, and records showing the elder Menendez may have changed his will, pointed at the brothers.
What happened? Who shot who? I don't know. I just came home. You came home and found who shot? Mom and Dad.
When the case goes to trial, a jury will have to decide if the Menendez brothers were truly filled with grief or acting out the cover-up of murder. Ron Allen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
That's it for now. Back to Harry and Paula.
Thank you, Vicki.
In Los Angeles, police investigators say the two Menendez brothers, who now admit to killing their parents, had the police completely fooled at the time of the murder in 1989. In court, the brothers are claiming they killed their parents after years of abuse. But police say at the time of the murders, the brothers expressed grief and shock over their parents' death.
Time to turn our attention now to Harry.
And to California, where there's high drama in a couple of California courtrooms. In Los Angeles, the jury appears split and even hostile over a verdict in the Reginald Denny beating trial. And in Van Nuys, highly charged testimony by the Menendez brothers, who face a possible death sentence in the murder of their millionaire parents. Correspondent Kristen Jeanette Myers of Court TV has been watching both trials. She joins us from Los Angeles this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Harry.
First, let's talk about the Denny trial. The judge gave jump real quick to Van Nuys, the Menendez trial. There was a lot of sympathy for a while for these young men, talking about what had happened to them as youngsters. That sympathy seems to have shifted somewhat. There was a major mess up in terms of weapon procurement in this. Tell us what the story is on that.
The prosecution is trying to make a lot of this because it appears that Eric Menendez told a lie on the stand, or the defense would say just was confused about his story. He said that he had been in a store buying a handgun or trying to buy one, but he didn't do it because they had a waiting period. Well, the prosecutor shot back on cross-examination. Did you know that this store didn't even sell handguns at the time you say you were in there? And what the prosecution is trying to do is show that we caught him in a lie. If he would lie about this, he would lie about anything, and you can't believe his testimony. They say he's created these tales of abuse to get himself off the hook because he murdered his parents, and now he's up for the death penalty.
Kristen Jeanette Myers, as always, we thank you for your input. Do appreciate it. Thank you.
18 after the hour, the Menendez trial in Los Angeles is the stuff tabloid headlines are made of, and as jury deliberations continue for more than a week now, everybody is wondering what's going on. Here to fill us in is Kristen Jeanette Myers of Court TV. Good morning and welcome to the studio. We
Good morning.
usually have you up on the remote there.
Thank you.
It's two juries that are deliberating this case. It is the holidays. Still, this seems to be taking an extraordinary amount of time. Why?
Well, you have to remember that the trial went on for almost 6 months, and there was an extraordinary amount of testimony that the jurors have to parse through. And there are two charges of the killings. There's the mother and the father for each defendant. And so that's a lot to go over. It wasn't going to be cut and dry going into it. So I think that it is long, but it's also what people expected given the length of the trial.
The jurors are asking to rehear a lot of testimony. I mean, are they really getting down to work here, or are they sort of taking this at a leisurely pace?
Well, each jury is a little different. The jury for Eric Menendez had a lot of requests last week for readbacks, and they wanted 10 people, testimony from 10 people, to be read back. And then after that, we haven't heard from them since, so they're obviously discussing what they learned. Lyle Menendez's jury had not been heard from at all, but then just yesterday, they asked to have one read back about the so-called hairpiece testimony. And now they are obviously discussing what they heard. And so each of the juries is different, but at this point, they have both asked for readbacks.
All right. There was a lot of dramatic testimony during the 6 months of the trial. We want to play a little bit of that for you now, some testimony from both Lyle and Eric Menendez.
I thought they were going ahead with their plan to kill us.
Then?
Yes.
So what did you do?
I ran upstairs to tell my brother that it was happening now and that they were going to, this was it.
Well, I thought they were going to kill us, but I thought Dad was going to have sex, and there wasn't any doubt about it in my mind.
Okay, Krista, give us a little bit of analysis here, because what we just heard really goes to the heart of the defense.
This is absolutely crucial, because if the jurors believe what the brothers are saying, that is, they thought that their parents were going to kill them, it was kill or be killed, then the jury can reduce the charge from first-degree murder, which carries a possible death penalty sentence, to manslaughter, which carries 2 to 4 years.
And the defense has gone to enormous lengths to try to prove that there was a real belief among the Menendez brothers, even going so far as to bring in an expert who was talking about research with snails, that if they were exposed to fear long enough, it tended to reprogram the brain?
Absolutely. There was a lot of expert testimony for the defense, and significantly, none for the prosecution. The prosecution really didn't want to touch the issue of child abuse. They didn't acknowledge that it went on, but they said, in essence, even if it did, so what? That doesn't give you the right to kill your parents. But yes, the defense went to extraordinary lengths, because the defense is, we did it, but we had a reason to. And so when you're doing that, you have to bring in the psychiatrist and explain how this all worked.
And I imagine that the $64 million question in this that the jury is weighing is, was there abuse, and how does it play into what they did?
Exactly, because it's possible for the jury to feel that there was abuse, and yet that doesn't mitigate what was done. And so there are really two questions that they have to get through.
You alluded to this just a moment ago. One of the pivotal events in this whole case is the hairpiece incident. What's that all about?
That's important, because the reason that this all started, according to the brothers, is there was an incident about a week before the murders where Lyle Menendez, who had a hairpiece, it was ripped off, he says, by his mother in front of his brother Eric. Now, Eric said that he didn't know that his brother had had a hairpiece, and he said that after that incident, the brothers started sharing family secrets, and Eric told his brother he had been molested by his father for 12 years. And then Lyle confronted his father, and that's how all of this started, and it got to the point that week where the brothers thought that they were going to be killed by their parents, all based on the fact that the hairpiece had been ripped off.
Just about 5 seconds left. How do you think it's going to come out?
It's very difficult to say, but the interesting thing is it could come out differently for both brothers. There could be a conviction, theoretically, in one case, and an acquittal in another.
Kristen Jeanette Myers, always good to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hattie?
It is 23 after the hour.
One of the two juries in the Eric and Lyle Menendez case says it is hopelessly deadlocked and sees no hope of reaching a decision. But as Joe Avilar of KCBS Television reports, the judge hearing the case isn't prepared to declare a mistrial just yet.
After 16 days of deliberations, Eric Menendez's jury seems hopelessly deadlocked.
It's from the jury, which states in the note, quote, "We are deadlocked. Positions have essentially not changed after 3 weeks of discussion and debate. I see no hope for reaching agreement on any of the counts."
Eric, along with his brother Lyle, shotgunned their parents to death while they ate dessert and watched TV in their Beverly Hills home. Both are charged with first-degree murder. Judge Stanley Weisberg told the jury,
"The question I would ask of you is whether, if you do continue your deliberations, there is a reasonable probability that the jury might arrive at a verdict."
Eric's attorney Leslie Abramson was unhappy, particularly about the judge's comments.
I want my client free. That's why. And he's going to stay in jail now.
District Attorney Gil Garcetti says,
as long as you have jurors talking, that they're not yelling and screaming at each other's throats, there's always a possibility of a verdict. I don't want a compromise verdict.
In the meantime, brother Lyle's jury may be having problems too. They may be deadlocked as well. The jurors asked for a rereading of 400 pages of trial testimony, but during it, 2 of the jurors appeared to doze off. Others just appeared frustrated. In Van Nuys, Joe Avilar, for CBS News.
For the Southwest. Paula?
Thanks, Mark. Jurors in the Menendez murder trials in California returned to their deliberations today. But in the case of Eric Menendez, they do so with little hope of reaching a verdict. The foreman told the judge yesterday they were deadlocked. The judge said, keep on trying. But what happens if they fail? Well, joining this morning are two of America's best-known attorneys from Boston, Alan Dershowitz, and from West Palm Beach, Florida, F. Lee Bailey. Good morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning.
Mr. Dershowitz, since both of the brothers have admitted to killing their parents, what do you think the jury is deadlocked on at the moment?
It's impossible to tell. This is a bizarre development because the judge has told the jurors that they cannot acquit. They have to choose between a minimum verdict of involuntary manslaughter and a maximum verdict of first-degree murder. So it may be that they're divided over whether it should be murder or manslaughter, or it may be that there are some jurors that are holding out for an acquittal despite what the judge instructed. And jurors are empowered to engage in effect in jury nullification and civil disobedience. And it's very interesting because in this case, Eric's lawyer clearly invited the jury to engage in jury nullification by her very attitudes. She was defiant to the judge. She was saying to the jury, in effect, look, I don't listen to the judge. You don't have to listen to the judge. So we may see a case of jury nullification here.
Mr. Bailey, do you see it that way?
Well, as I said when I heard about it, only in California, and it's awfully difficult to figure out what goes on in California, but I think there is some possibility, looking at the harsher end of the scale, that there could be a division between first and second degree murder, those holding out for second, trying to ensure that there could be no capital punishment.
Is there any way, Mr. Bailey, of telling if the jury is at all sympathetic to Eric Menendez's story and the story that the defense attorney so artfully built during this case, that his father had sexually abused him and the killing was a manifestation of that?
Well, there may be some sympathy in there. Obviously there is, because this could easily have gone down rather quickly as a first-degree murder. Somebody has bought the story to a degree. I don't think they bought it to the degree that they're holding out to acquit, but on the other hand, my friend Alan Dershowitz is a dangerous man to disagree with.
Is that the case, Mr. Dershowitz?
Well, I think we have... Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, what options does the judge have at this point if the jury does come back today and says, we really can't move this along any further?
Well, the judge may have the option under California law of saying to the jury, tell me precisely what you disagree about. And if what you disagree about is only the degree of murder, then maybe we can arrange for a situation where the lowest level of agreement becomes the verdict. But that may not be permissible under California law. What we're seeing, I think, is another example of the excuse abuse, which is running rampage through this country and putting the dead victim on trial. It's become the defense de jure. I have to, as a professional, have nothing but admiration for the lawyers who have successfully apparently deadlocked the jury in this case, because it seemed to many of us in the very beginning as a fairly open and shut case. The other option, of course, is to try it again right from the beginning. One option that I think this development obviates, I don't think we're going to see the death penalty in this case. I think once you see one jury deadlocked in a case involving two brothers, if it results in a deadlock in a second trial, it will be very difficult for a judge to impose the death penalty in the face of the fact that several jurors have held out. So it's a very positive development for both young men.
We've heard murmurs, Mr. Bailey, from people outside the courtroom that there is the likelihood of a mistrial. Does that potential exist?
Well, despite the fact that California takes twice as long to try most of its lawsuits as any other state, I think the judge is not going to let go easily. He could give a blockbuster instruction, or he could, if he takes a precedent from the recent police trial, Powell et al., find out who the troublesome jurors are and simply excuse them. That was a novel move, but maybe it's a harbinger of things to come.
Mr. Dershowitz is shaking his head, and he's got 20 seconds to respond to that.
I think it's going to be very tough in a case like this for the judge to actually remove a juror unless we hear from other jurors that there's something very wrong. I think California is stuck with these jurors. We may see a hung jury, and if so, we may see a new trial, but I doubt that we'll see the death penalty.
Alan Dershowitz, F. Lee Bailey, it's always nice to see the two of you. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Growth.
All right, thanks a lot, John. Jury deliberations continue today in the Los Angeles trials of the Menendez brothers, accused of murdering their parents for a $14 million inheritance. But as Sandra Hughes reports, the drawn-out deliberations could be headed nowhere.
His jury may be wrestling with a verdict, but Eric Menendez was momentarily smiling in court yesterday. The jury asked to have certain portions of Brother Lyle's testimony reread.
Question, but you were thinking about fingerprints which could incriminate you and cause you to be arrested, right? Answer, right.
Eric and his older brother Lyle are facing 4 possible verdicts from murder to manslaughter for the shotgun slayings of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. The jury seems to be struggling with the brothers' state of mind.
And one can infer from their request that they're arguing with each other about whether the mental state sufficient for murder is present.
Just 3 days ago, Eric's jury said they were deadlocked, but the Los Angeles district attorney says he'll retry the case if there is a mistrial.
We now know even more about this case than before we started, because now we know the entire defense, which we did not know when we started this trial.
The other jury deciding the fate of Lyle Menendez is entering its 21st day of deliberations. Some legal experts are wondering if that jury may also be struggling with a possible deadlock. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
After only 3 hours of deliberation, a federal jury in Los Angeles decided Michael Jackson did.
There's been a major development tonight at the trial of one of the 2 Menendez brothers charged with murdering their wealthy parents. Correspondent Sandra Hughes is live in Los Angeles with the details. Sandra?
Well, Connie, the jurors deciding the fate of Eric Menendez have deadlocked. They are hung on the most serious charge of first-degree murder and lesser charges against him. The judge has called a mistrial. This does not mean that Eric Menendez will be set free. It is unlikely the judge will let him out of jail because the district attorney has said Eric Menendez will be tried again.
23-year-old Eric and his older brother Lyle are accused of shooting and killing their millionaire parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, as they watch TV in their Beverly Hills mansion. The brothers admitted the killings, but said they acted out of fear.
Dad said he would kill me if I ever told anyone, and he was serious.
The secret the brothers said they were going to reveal was that Jose had sexually molested both Eric and Lyle for years.
He did what he wanted to me, and I couldn't stop that. And I wanted to, but I couldn't. I don't know why.
But prosecutors said the brothers killed out of hate and greed.
And do you really think that child abuse justifies murder?
Meantime, older brother Lyle's jury today asked the judge questions about legal terms separating murder from manslaughter, and they continue deliberating. Connie?
Thank you. Sandra Hughes, live in Los Angeles.
Hopelessly deadlocked. After 19 days of deliberations, a California jury reported it could not reach a verdict in the case of Eric Menendez. He is accused, along with his brother Lyle, of murdering their wealthy parents for money. The prosecutor promises another trial. Well, this morning we've asked 2 of America's most prominent attorneys to join us once again. Alan Dershowitz is on the road from Tucson, Arizona this morning, and in Oklahoma City, F. Lee Bailey. Good morning to the 2 of you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
So, Lee, it is not clear at this point why the jury could not reach a unanimous decision. We're not sure what the numerical split is at the moment either. But from the beginning, prosecutors said this was an open and shut case. Does this represent a tremendous defeat for the prosecution?
Oh, I don't think it's a tremendous defeat for the prosecution. I said a few days ago when the deadlock was first announced that my suspicion was they were hung between first and second. I stand on that speculation today because I see that Leslie Abrams, who was afraid of nobody, including dinosaurs, is looking to plead to manslaughter.
Alan Dershowitz?
I think it is a tremendous defeat for the prosecutors and a great victory for the defense, because what it basically does is it puts Leslie in a terrific position to plea bargain. Consider what would happen, for example, now if Lyle's jury were to come back with an acquittal or with a manslaughter verdict. The idea of then putting the brother, who is, if anything, slightly less culpable, on trial for his life for first-degree murder would seem unfair. I also think that the next jury, no matter how they're sequestered and picked, will know that one brother was acquitted or a lesser verdict was rendered, and that the first jury was hung. So I think right now it puts Eric into a terrific position for purposes of the second trial. It was a great victory for his lawyer.
Alan, I'm going to have to object. You're assuming a fact, not an evidence. Supposing they give Lyle the electric chair.
No, you're
then
right.
Then I think there'll be no plea bargaining. The prosecution will be hell-bent for leather to make sure Eric gets the same thing, else California think the brothers weren't treated equally.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. But I think also the chances of him getting the electric chair are now reduced because of the hung jury in the other case. The dynamic is such that both cases, I think, interplay one with the other.
Well, let's talk
I think
about
they've been out too long to get the electric chair for Lyle. I agree with you on that, Alan.
Let me throw this out to both of you. The position Leslie Abramson finds herself in, she said she's willing to consider a plea bargain rather than sending her client off to jail for the rest of his life. How amenable to that will the prosecution be?
That depends on, number one, what the split turns out to be and how it was split, and number two, Alan is correct. What happens to Lyle is going to have a great deal to do with what happens to Eric, and nobody's going to make any decisions until that case resolves itself.
Well, what could the impact be, conceivably, of this hung jury on the other case? Alan?
Oh, on the other case, I doubt that the Lyle jury will know about the hung jury in Eric's case. So I don't think it will have any direct impact. It's the reverse that's very important. What Lyle's jury does will have an enormous impact on Eric's future. Also, I think this case already has had an impact. The abuse excuse has become validated by a hung jury, and that's very important. It will, I think, encourage vigilantism not only by other people who claim abuse, but also by other juries. And other lawyers, I think, will be encouraged to raise this kind of defense in future cases. So although this is a hung jury, which technically means not a legal verdict, this has an important impact on the legal system.
Is, though, Lee, this use-abuse being overused, and does it have the potential to be overused in these cases?
May well be, but lawyers have to deal with what is available, and no matter what the ultimate split turns out to be, any lawyer who avoided capital punishment in either of these cases has done a phenomenal job.
I agree.
Alan Dershowitz, you got 15 seconds. Any closing thoughts this morning?
Well, I agree with Lee that if capital punishment can be avoided in this case, the lawyers have done a great job. Look, this was an open and shut case. In my view, it still looks like an open and shut case. The lawyers, the defense lawyers, it seems to me, did a terrific job by turning it from open and shut to hung. That's a great victory.
Alan Dershowitz, Sefli Bailey, nice to see the two of you again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Los Angeles. Jurors considering the fate of Lyle Menendez will reconvene Friday, ordered to make another attempt to reach a verdict. The jury told Judge Stanley Weisberg they were deadlocked after 24 days of deliberations. Lyle Menendez and his brother Eric are charged with murdering their parents. The case against Eric ended in a mistrial after a separate jury failed to reach a verdict.
California seems to have become a breeding ground for long and costly trials, and the curtain has gone up on yet another. Reed Galen.
Now it's the Menendez brothers, the sequel. Before Simpson, this would have been the most dramatic show in town.
As exotic as the Menendez trial is compared to the Simpson trial, it's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Now it's just another one of those high-profile, drawn-out California murder cases. It's been 6 years since the brothers killed their parents. Their first trial took 6 months and reached no conclusion as to whether they were justified. Long, sensational trials have become as much a part of the California experience as raging brush fires and earthquakes, burning up criminal justice resources and rattling people's faith in the system.
California's Menendez brothers, charged with killing their parents, will be retried before one jury. Lyle and Eric Menendez's first trial was heard by 2 separate juries in the same courtroom. Neither reached a verdict. The brothers admit to the shotgun murders, but say they had been abused for years. The defense had argued for separate juries again.